The first Ohio State scrimmage and training camp practice number 9 is in the books, and senior day is almost here for the Buckeyes. Welcome to Snap Judgments. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Plenty to get into with Ryan Day, who had his second press conference of camp here in August as we hit the midway mark of this month. But first things first, we haven't talked about the big adjustment to the schedule. I don't know if it's a big deal to you. Personally, I think it makes a lot of sense. The only thing that really matters is that the seniors signed off on moving everything off of the game into week 1 against Ball State. Makes a lot of logistical sense to me.
I think I'm fine with it. The reality is when you're playing that game against Michigan on November 28th or November 30th or whatever date ends up falling, there's way too many things going on that day. You have the Tunnel of Pride, you have this and that, you have all this other stuff. And the last thing I want, if I'm a head football coach, is my most important players or my leaders crying 20 minutes before kickoff against their biggest rival. Like, I think it's better to allow the focus to stay on the football game.
There's enough emotions for that game as it is.
There's enough emotion for that game as there is. You don't need to have the parents on the field and all of the other flood of emotions and people being asked, is this your last time at Ohio State? Are you going to cry? Are you going to feel that? Like, there's enough going on. I think it's fine. I know that there will always be traditionalists who say, this is the way it's always been, this is the way it always has to be. I just don't know that I buy into that. I don't disapprove of anybody who does, but I just think that it's not really something that needs to be a talking point. I think Ryan Day, to your point initially, brought it to the seniors and said, what do you guys think about this? And he said they were all very quickly on board with it, and that's all I really need to hear.
Yeah, and I think, I raised this when it came up a few days ago with some people in the Woody, and it's like, well, I mean, if you asked me and I was spitballing ideas, homecoming seems like a great spot for that, especially in the middle of the schedule. It doesn't matter. And I'm not here to quibble with the choice that they made. I think it makes a lot of sense for the game. If you think about the seniors 2 years ago, the emotions for that, then losing the game, but then also playing again in the Horseshoe a couple weeks later, that wasn't their last game in Ohio Stadium. So there will be strong feelings, I guess, on both sides. I don't know where maybe there'll be a poll about it and people can weigh in, but if there's uniform agreement about it and consent from the senior class and from the coaching staff and from the administration to that, I don't really see how there can be much argument. I understand tradition, great appreciation for it, but when you factor in the changes to college football that had nothing to do with what Ohio State volunteered, college football playoff expansion, anything else, NIL, all the things that have changed, 5 for 5 now. Like, all these factors have pointed it in a direction where this actually, I think, deserves a thumbs up for it. At least that's my.
I mean, if you look at a guy like Brandon Ennis, he can play another season at Ohio State. He is a senior, however. This is year 4. Eventually, we'll stop talking about stuff like freshman, junior, senior. It's just going to be first year,
second
fifth year, whatever. That is where this is going to go because the eligibility piece is such a nightmare. So certainly would expect to see multiple celebrations of guys throughout the year. And I think that's something you can do if you really lean into this.
All right, so that's the logistical news of the day. Buckeyes did scrimmage on Saturday morning at the Woody. Dealt with a little rain, which I think is good. Got to see that elements. Think back to a year ago. Julian saying, can he handle it when the weather gets cold if he gets a little rain? Apparently, based on Ryan Day's evaluation immediately coming off the practice field, the offense actually got better when they got the elements.
He said the offensive line walked off the field feeling confident and feeling good about themselves. And that's without Austin Birm again, who the Buckeyes expect back in a day or two, from what I understand. So you have a group on offense that is just starting to figure itself out. And I think that's expected because, again, so many pieces were missing in the spring. And now you've got them all back, including Bo Jackson, who was Ryan Day. If you're going to circle one player that Ryan Day really gassed up the most on Saturday, it would have probably been Bo Jackson. He said Bo has had a really, really good first week and a half of camp. Jacoby Jackson, Isaiah West right there with him. He said that Bo knows he was challenged. He said Carlos Loughlin knows he was challenged, and it seems like those guys have taken that and run with it so far. Bo, specifically being pointed out by Ryan Day, is winning more at the second level. And I think it's interesting. It's the first time we've ever really heard him be so direct and say that was not there on film a year ago. It was a little bit more pointed.
That's largely been a private conversation.
It was a little more pointed than I think we've heard him in that case. But again, that is we're going to keep trying to light the fire. We're going to keep trying to push you along. And I think it's probably what someone like Bo needs, because there is an opportunity to get complacent heading into year 2 when you think you've got it all already. When you think you've got it.
When you think you've got it, that's when you get
That's when you get got. And so Bo Jackson is getting it. And it seems like that's working for Ryan Day. And he seems pretty happy with the running backs today, as opposed to the last 3 or 4 times he's been asked directly about the running backs where it was a mixed bag to the negative. Today seemed a little bit more optimistic.
Well, and he also, the previous 3 press conferences, when asked or voluntarily would bring up the backfield, he would start by talking about Isaiah West, then Jacoby Jackson. Rule number 1 of the Austin Birm Show. Today it was Bo every time it was brought up.
Jacoby, and then Isaiah.
And then trying to bring along the depth. So I think that's significant for Bo Jackson, the same way that, you've said this several times throughout the last couple of days, and you asked me about Luke Fahey, and we talked about it with Bobby Carpenter on Monday. So it was just hard for me to wrap my mind around it, but a no accidents, intentional Ryan Day saying that there's a push going on from Luke Fahey towards Tavian St. Clair, and Justin Martin not really being involved in that conversation, that feels more significant than anything we might have seen in the first 3 days of practice.
Yeah, and Luke had his black stripe removed after the scrimmage, Ryan Day said, so that's a little bit of breaking news on the snap judgment side of things. But football is played between the ears, and Luke Fahey is really, really smart, and Tavian St. Clair is still learning the game of football. He does not have the depth of football knowledge that Luke Fahey did in the system Luke played in high school. So we will see how that comes along. Again, similar to the Bo Jackson, Isaiah West conversation, as we said a week and a half ago. You wonder how much of it is Ryan Day trying to light a fire under someone. You wonder how much of it is actually just coaching psychology. But Ryan Day, when it was asked about Austin Sarabeld on Saturday, and said, how much of this is doing what's best for Austin? And Ryan Day's response was, we have to do what's best for Ohio State first. And I couldn't help but draw the correlation between that comment and the comment that he made about Luke and the push that he's making to be the backup quarterback at Ohio State. Because eventually, the guy who plays the best and who is most consistently making plays is going to have to be the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, Tavian's going to have every opportunity to be that guy. But Ohio State's not going to wait around and just give it to him because he was here a year ago. That's just not how it's going to work.
Yeah, not a ton of defensive conversation coming out of that scrimmage. That was, and also not a surprise because Ryan Day had made it clear. He's like, he came directly off the practice field in to have that conversation with us. When it's going to be about evaluating the defense, he's obviously going to defer to the film. So weren't a number of names brought up on that side of the football outside of continued praise for Jay Timmons. Some prompted, some unprompted. It's hard to imagine right now that there's not a prominent role for Jay Timmons. I think some of the conversation from Jermaine Matthews has trended back in that positive direction again. Not that it had any reason not to. Devin Sanchez had said right after that first practice, we know he's going to be out there. He didn't name him specifically, but it intimated that was the case. But this secondary, I think, continues to generate a lot of optimism for Ohio State, more than the front seven, although there's not a lack of that there either.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think about all of the discussion from the minute that Terry Moore and Earl Little and all those Dominic Kelly arrived in January. The conversation was, okay, what are these safeties going to look like? And right now, all of the conversation really centers around the cornerbacks, which is because Jay Timmons is forcing that conversation to be had. On the other side of that, Ryan Day did specifically call out, and not call out, but praise TJ Alford and Riley Pettijohn first when asked about the linebackers, to just say, hey, these guys are really pushing. These guys are making sure that they're going to play. A lot of conversation about special teams and how guys can earn their way onto the field. So that's, when you're talking about the defense, that's really all he was talking about today is those guys. Do you think that there is more reason to suspect, after listening to Ryan Day's press conference on Saturday, that Chris Henry Jr. is a real piece of this offense?
Yes. Every box, I think, is being checked. And I think you could tell, thinking back to the first 3 days, the physicality was so much different. I think back to being out here and in the building to our right in early March. And that's when I was like, I might be tapping the brakes right here. I think that's probably what's best. It's unfair to put him in a Jeremiah Smith category. It still is, by the way. Jeremiah is one of one, but if there's a 90% version of Jeremiah as a true freshman that's in there, I think that's distinctly possible based on the work that he's put in since, let's say, March 5th till now. It's undeniable when you see him work out. It was blatantly obvious in those first 3 practices, and now the level of discussion that is coming from the coaching staff, the teammates about what Chris Henry Jr. is doing. Some of the clips that are shared from workouts, by the team account, that's sustained. That's the more proof of concept for that. And I still don't know what exactly that means because
he's played behind Jeremiah Smith.
If you're going to go back into a Jeremiah and Carnell scenario, you and I have talked about this and theorized that maybe that limited the offense in some respects. It sounds like a counterintuitive thing to have two NFL caliber wide receivers, and it might not be great for a college offense, but I think that's what I saw at times last year. But if Chris Henry Jr., and when it comes to the ball skills, when it comes to the slants that we saw him running, the touchdowns in the red zone, I think we all knew that was possible for him. It will still, I think, ultimately come down to his ability to block and hold up on the perimeter to assist the run game. And I don't know enough right now to say that that's definitely happening. Everything else, it is. But that was the trade-off I think that Ohio State made a year ago in some respects with Carnell Tate and Jeremiah out there. It's like, well, they're so good at this that maybe you can give a little on the other end. And I don't think that that's the way that Ryan Day and Arthur Smith view this right now.
I don't think so. But it is still a reminder. This kind of now feels like fire under your butt Saturday to me. Like there's Brandon Innis's name did not get mentioned today. Devin McEwen's name did not get mentioned. Kyle Parker's name has not been mentioned. Some of that is because the media, we have an obsession with the new faces, but those guys are new faces, Brandon, Kyle Parker and Devin McEwen, but everyone is just enamored by freshmen, 5-star this, 5-star that. And it will be interesting to see if the conversation at wide receiver evolves into maybe it makes more sense to have Devin McEwen as your primary slot guy and you have Chris and Jeremiah on the outside. We've theorized over and over that Arthur Smith's offense will look like Matt Patricia's defense in that there is no consistency from week to week based on like alignment or personnel because it's going to be matchup based. But when you find freaks like Jeremiah Smith, like Chris Henry Jr.
Hey, freaks.
When you find freaks like that, like you got to play them. You got to play your freaks. And Ohio State's got some freaks.
Yeah, the freaks are here.
So
those are the names.
So no block O today, no captains today. We expect that will probably come towards the end of this coming week.
That would be my guess. It typically arrives around the second scrimmage after you've had a chance to get through the gauntlet. But that would be a bold prediction. It could happen still.
Could be. But we don't think so.
But as camp also did start a week later than it did a year ago, and they don't play till September 5th, which is senior day. To bring it back full circle on these snap judgments, will be not in the Woody again until Wednesday of next week, but of course that won't stop the beat and everything else from rolling along. Live show on Monday, everything else that you come to expect. Maybe the schedule will be shuffled just a little bit, but I think you'll probably like it anyway. Uh-huh. That's a wrap on a week and a half of camp and at the Woody. Still halfway to go throughout August and a couple days after that until the opener. Countdown is well and truly on. Thanks for joining us for some Snappy Jays. He's Birm. I'm Austin. We'll talk to you on Monday.